Mein Name ist Jörg Beisel. Ich arbeite bei SAP und bin deutschlandweit für die Außenanlagen zuständig und setze mich proaktiv für einen diskriminierungsfreien und respektvollen Umgang mit HIV-positiven Menschen ein. Ich bin seit Frühjahr 2015 HIV-positiv. Für mich ist da einfach eine Welt zusammengebrochen, weil ich nicht genau wusste, was bedeutet das jetzt für mein Leben. Für mich war das lange Zeit ein Thema, dass ich gedacht habe, na, sag's auf der Arbeit nicht, weil es hat erstmal für deine Arbeit und das, was du tust und dein Umfeld, ist es nicht von Interesse. Aber man hat das Gefühl, einfach so ein Stück weit von sich selbst sich zu entfernen und nicht authentisch zu sein. Und da hatte ich für mich den Entschluss gefasst, ich möchte das denen sagen.
Das Thema HIV in der Arbeitswelt war mir ehrlich gesagt nicht bewusst bis zu dem Zeitpunkt, als der Jörg mir gesagt hat, dass er erkrankt ist. Also er hat mich eiskalt erwischt. Es war im Grunde genommen so, dass zu meinem großen Erschrecken mein Wissen zum Thema HIV irgendwo Ende der 90er Jahre aufgehört hat.
Als ich meinem Chef das gesagt habe und Steven ist aufgesprungen, hat mich gedrückt und hat gesagt, er findet das total großartig, dass ich sowas Privates und Persönliches mit ihm teile. Was ich gelernt habe, ist, Ausgrenzung ist meistens das, was man zum größten Teil selber betreibt, indem man anderen Menschen glaubt, eine Information nicht zutrauen zu können, dass sie damit nicht umgehen können. Die Rückendeckung des Unternehmens bedeutet für mich letzten Endes ein proaktives Bekenntnis dazu, dass man sagt, du bist genauso, wie du bist, richtig. Du bist Teil unserer Vielfalt und Vielfalt ist das, was unsere Unternehmenskultur ausmacht. Das ist unsere DNA. Für mich ist es wichtig, dass die SAP diese Kampagne in dieser Form auch unterstützt, um einem Thema Sichtbarkeit zu geben. Ganz oft ist einfach dieses Aufklärungsdefizit da, dass Menschen ein veraltetes Bild haben. Es ist eine Erkrankung, die noch nicht geheilt wird, ja, oder geheilt werden kann, aber sie ist so gut im Griff zu halten, dass man einfach ein normales Leben führen kann. Ich war bereits 3 Monate nach meiner Infektion unter Nachweis. Was bedeutet, wenn jemand unter Nachweisgrenze ist? Er kann jemanden nicht anstecken. Man kann mir ganz normal die Hand geben, man kann mich drücken, so wie vorher auch. Mich von meinen Freunden zu outen war mitunter schwierig. Es gibt so Herzensfreunde von mir. Und natürlich glaubt man fest im Inneren daran, dass die einen fallen lassen. Aber die Angst ist extrem groß.
Also ich habe davon erfahren, wir haben uns getroffen, haben einen schönen Abend zusammen gehabt und irgendwann habe ich gemerkt, da kommt so ein bisschen was, er will mir was erzählen und da hat er es mir dann erzählt. Und ja, das war im ersten Moment war das schon ein Schock. Ich war erstmal ein bisschen sprachlos, ein bisschen entsetzt, ein bisschen verunsichert, muss ich auch zugeben. Aber dann dachte ich mir in dem Moment, okay, der Jörg bleibt der Jörg.
Die Unterstützung, die ich durch meine Freunde erfahren habe, ist wirklich ganz einfach. Sie haben mich so behandelt wie vorher auch. Ohne ein besonderes Thema draus zu machen, genauso herzlich. Und das ist das, was man eigentlich braucht, dieses Gefühl von Normalität. Die HIV-Infektion meiner Familie zu sagen, war mit Sicherheit die schwerste Hürde. Einfach weil meine Familie mir sehr, sehr wichtig ist und auch die Angst, die damit verbunden war, dass sie es irgendwie vielleicht nicht verstehen könnten. Dazu muss ich sagen, meine Mutter ist sehr schwer krebskrank, die hat Knochenmarkskrebs. Und dann habe ich meine Diagnose bekommen und ich habe mir tatsächlich die Frage gestellt, kann ich damit leben, dass wenn es meiner Mom schlechter geht und sie vielleicht stirbt, dass es vielleicht mit meiner Botschaft zu tun hat?
Die Erkrankung von Jörg hat mir schon, sagen wir, einen großen Schock versetzt. Ich bin selbst sehr krank und ich hatte Angst, mein Kind würde vielleicht vor mir sterben. Das war mein erster Gedanke. Aber beim näheren Hinschauen ist es natürlich Quatsch. Ich hoffe einfach, dass die Medikamente für ihn sein Leben gut machen, auf viele, viele Jahre. Die Aufklärung über HIV halte ich für sehr, sehr wichtig, weil ich glaube, das ist immer noch nicht überall angekommen. Und deshalb finde ich, ist es auch wichtig, dass man in die Öffentlichkeit geht, sich nicht versteckt, sondern nach vorne geht, immer einen Schritt nach vorne.
Es hat alles was Positives. Schau nach vorne, geh respektvoll mit deinem Gegenüber um und steh für das ein, an das du glaubst. Und das ist das, warum ich es heute auch mache und hier sitze und meine Geschichte erzähle.
You're on mute.
Yeah, Axel, I think, is next, and we can't hear you.
Axel, you're on mute, honey.
Sorry. Welcome to our session on working positively. What an amazing and emotional video of my friend and colleague Jörg from SAP. On behalf of the whole team of IBM, SAP, Deutsche Aidshilfe, and Human Rights Campaign, we are glad to have you here on this session this morning on a very important subject: how to handle HIV in nowadays working life. Myself, I will tell you now also my story about my going on with this disease. It started a lot of years before the story of Jörg, because I was getting my infection in the year 2002. And I will tell you a bit about how it happened to me and how was the result of all what comes after with my workspace. In fact, I was working in 2002 as an international project manager on a big project in Switzerland, leading a big team. And it was a normal Friday when I got some stomach aches. I went to the hospital in Switzerland and they thought, okay, it might be just a food poisoning because I was eating something in a train. So I stayed overnight in a hospital for one night, and the next morning I didn't feel better at all. I decided on my own to go to the German border because it was very close there, and went to a hospital on the German side of the Lake of Constance. And that was the last minute I remember, because I felt conscienceless for more than 2 weeks. When I woke up, I was connected to a lot of cables and none of my organs was working correctly. I had problems with my kidneys, with my stomach, with my heart, with my lung. Everything was not working correctly. And of course, the people who saw me 2 weeks conscienceless in a bed in a hospital, they were all worried a lot about me. My parents were there, even colleagues from the company have already seen me there. And when I woke up, I was asking the doctors, what's going on with me? And they told me, we don't know that. We just see that you're in a very critical condition, that your body is refusing to work normally, but we don't have the reason for that. But you are in a critical condition which might endanger your life. That's why my parents decided to take me away from this very southern hospital in Germany to the place where I was living at that time, to Hamburg, into a hospital there. And I was there in Hamburg and it didn't get better. In fact, my condition was getting worse. I lost a lot of my weight. And of course, I lost also a lot of my positive thinking. And then the doctor who was taking care about me came to me and we talked a lot about everything. He asked me about my life, about what happened in my past, in holidays and so on. And in fact, he was even asking me about my holidays. And I told him that I'm doing normal holidays as everybody else, except that I was once in my life in an area which was very far away from Germany, in the Dominican Republic, where I did a sport holiday. And he asked me, was there something special? And I said, yes, I had an injury there because I was doing windsurfing and I injured myself and I lost a lot of blood. And the only thing I remember there is I got a blood transfusion. And this was a very important information for the doctor because he started to think. And a few days afterwards, he came back to me and told me, Axel, we got your diagnosis. And now you have to be very, very strong. Because I can tell you, you have HIV and you don't have only HIV, but you have also the starting point reached of AIDS, because your virus load is so high that we are really concerned, and we cannot yet tell you if we have a medical treatment for you which will help you to survive. And you can imagine for a person in the 30s, this is a very, very strong diagnosis. And then he told me, don't tell that about your disease to your friends, to your family, to your employer. They will not understand that. Remember, we are in the year 2002, and the disease HIV was really in the faces of people seen, and a lot of people were afraid about anybody having HIV. So I decided on my own to tell that to my parents, and it was for them a shock, of course. My father even got a heart attack on the same day as I told him. And then I decided for myself, oh my God, what this disease can cause for other people as well. So it took me some time to recover in hospital from this very, very bad condition. But fortunately, the treatment was working on me. And after a few weeks, even months, I was really back to not a normal life, but I could at least work again. And now it starts about the working positively issue. You can imagine when everybody is telling you, hide that from your employer, you're living in a permanent fear that somebody finds it out and is asking you, why are you going so often to a doctor? Why are you taking all these pills each day? There must be a reason. Don't you want to share that with me or with us? But I was afraid to share it with IBM. First of all, I was quite new to IBM because I just joined the company 1 year before. And secondly, I saw the reaction of other peoples in the media where I read how companies were firing people with HIV because they were afraid they could pass the disease to other people in the job. So it was an environment where it was really not very optimistic to talk about the disease. But imagine how you feel in your working life if you have always fears on your shoulder, if you have always to hide something. This is really very painful, and painful for the body and especially for the brain. And it took me 4 years before I felt free enough to tell IBM about my disease. And I had a good trust to my manager at that time. And I told him, Gregor, I don't know what you will answer to me, but I tell you now I have a very strong disease, a very heavy disease. I don't know if I can fulfill all the expectations you invest in me as an employer in the future. So I have HIV, and if you want that I leave the company, I will offer it from my side for free. And the reaction was totally different from what I was expecting. He took me in his arms, gave me a big hug and said, Axel, forget all these thoughts. From this moment, as you have always been, you're even a more important employee for our company. And we will take care for you that you will have always a working environment and surrounding where you have no fear, no pain, and where you can be open with all the things which attract you. And this was a very, very important sign. And this is the start of the story, which leads to a very, very strong relationship of IBM in Germany with the Deutsche Aidshilfe. And I'm more than pleased now to pass over to my friend and colleague Silke Klump, who is the managing director from Deutsche Aidshilfe here in Germany, who will tell you a bit more how the whole story of working positively here in Germany started. Silke.
Yes, thank you, Axel. And let me share my screen with all of you. I hope it will work out. Oh, I have to maybe go differently. Sorry for that. 1 second. And give you the whole screen presentation, not only the let's see how I can do this.
You want me to share, Silke?
I don't know why it appears with the close to this. I am crazy. Yeah, please, Kim, I'm sorry.
No problem.
It's not the best Zoom day for me. So usually spending my whole days on Zoom, but okay. So hello everyone, and many thanks to Axel. It's so wonderful that you are here to start us off today. And it fits so perfectly because you started this project with us. You were and you are a key figure in this project. I am very, very happy that I can present the origins and goals of this project here today. It's the most successful project in the field of anti-discrimination at the workplace that we, Deutsche Aidshilfe, have ever had. And I think we can learn a lot from it. We are learning how good things can become big. What we will hear about today started because we wanted to do something about discrimination in Germany. And now that thing is going around the world. That does make us a little proud. But above all, it is a great opportunity to really make a difference in many companies, organizations, and in the lives of many people. What is special about this project? Well, probably more than anything, it's the spirit of cooperation, the passionate collaboration of very different people from very different organizations. This project was driven from the beginning by a fantastic and inspiring atmosphere and strengths. And you see us there on the picture on the kickoff event in July 2019 in Hamburg, so last year. And next slide, please, Kim. It was a start with 50 signatories, including Norbert Janssen. So this is next slide. And then Ernesto Marinelli from SAP and many more. There were so many wonderful people. Next slide, please. And everybody gave everything to sign, as you see, because there were so many people that the whole signatories were covering the whole plate. We held a press conference, so you can go through the next slides, Kim, please. We established networks, we had good discussions, and at the end, there were the teddy bears. And even Deborah dropped by. She is from the United States and the Vice President of HR of IBM. Yes, you couldn't go on. Thank you. So networking in a different way, maybe, and the teddy bears, which are very important in Germany for World AIDS Day. They are produced for World AIDS Day, changing every year a bit, and then they are given for World AIDS Day to remember all people living with HIV who died of HIV or AIDS. And so let's come to the declaration. The declaration was and is the core of this program, a voluntary commitment with which companies say, we do not, next please, we do not discriminate. Oh, it's again one. Sorry, there are a lot of, and again. Okay, so the commitments. We do not discriminate, we do not test. People with HIV are welcome here. They are employees like everyone else. Special treatment is not appropriate. And we stand behind employee with HIV. The signatories make very concrete promises. For example, to allow themselves to be taught about HIV and living with HIV, to create contact points for discrimination cases, to get the workforce on board by means of internal communication. And the next slides are about examples for internal communication. So this poster is in German for sure, but it says HIV does not play a role here. Other posters simply say HIV positive, welcome. The overall goal is very simple. People with HIV should simply be allowed to lead a normal life and be open about their HIV status without fears if they want to be open. HIV should not be a priority in everyday working life. It is simply irrelevant to the work itself, so it should not play a role. In short, what is medically normal today must also be possible in social life, completely natural life with HIV, without unnecessary fears, without unnecessary hassle. Next, please. So it says, the German slogan is against discrimination, for respect and acceptance. So this is the core message. And this big goal, of course, we as NGO could never have brought into the working world on our own. So the solution was to do it together. Luckily, IBM and Deutsche Aidshilfe have already been cooperating very closely for over a decade. And this picture is just one out of a lot we have. So formerly CEO Martina Köderitz at our 30th anniversary birthday party in 2014. And the next slide are 3 wonderful IBM students doing a great job with us during our biannual HIV conference. What I want to say is, when we started working positively, we already got the culture shock between NGO and big business behind us. This was very helpful. And next slide shows Jörg Beisel and the Senior Vice President Ernesto Marinelli from SAP. And thanks to them, SAP was on board very soon, and together the whole thing was ready for takeoff. Next, please. So the 3 main key success factors. The first is the commitment of the executives. They opened doors and ensured that so many employers came on board. A kind of snowball was set in motion. Second, we had openly HIV-positive employees on board. Thanks to Axel and Jörg, they drove the program forward and brought to life what it was all about. And the third most important thing, the cooperation between executives, HIV-positive employees, and us as an NGO. Next, please. The executives really took very clear positions, gave a good example, and stood up with their colleagues. So here you have again Ernesto and Jörg and Norbert and Axel. That was absolutely crucial. And something else has helped us tremendously, the commitment of the LGBTI community. Next, Kim, please. Thanks. After a conference in Germany similar to Out and Equal, many of us took the project to their companies, inspired the executives, and then got companies on board. Yes, it was also the spirit of our community that made working positively so successful, so rousing, and so authentic. By the way, the whole project generated so much power that in some companies it started a dialogue about other taboo topics as well. Many people opened up, not only about their HIV status, but also other coming outs, simply because they felt encouraged by this. The most important thing we can learn from the project is this: together, we can achieve so much more. We can learn from each other because we are very different. Next, please. So this is Positiv Arbeiten in German, going around the world to becoming working positively internationally. So what a success. In Germany, we will have soon 100 signatories, and now more and more countries join: the US, Canada, Austria, Czech Republic, and that's just the beginning. And today we would like to ask all those who are listening to consider: can you support this program? Can you help to make it a success in your company as well? We wish the launch in the US and North America and many other countries all the best. Spread the word, share the content, be the message. Thank you, or danke. Let's go.
All right, thanks, Silke. My name is Bob Reitel, and we are now going to transition to a panel discussion, which I have the honor of leading. So welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us, and it's been very inspiring so far. Just a quick introduction, and then I'll let you know who we have on our panel today. Again, my name is Bob Reitel. My day job is the director of the Global SAP Partnership, but my other roles at IBM include being an out executive, and I'm also the global executive sponsor for our LGBT workforce diversity team. So it's an honor to be part of that team as well. Joining us on the panel, we have a fantastic panel of experts who've been working positively. Silke Klum will continue to join us on the panel. We have a couple more questions for Silke coming up to expand on the role that Deutsche Aidshilfe played. Axel is also going to join us on the panel as well to hear more about his inspiring story. I don't know if he mentioned his title, but Axel is a senior manager for IBM Global Services and the IBM Deutschland region. And also joining us from SAP is Sabrina Dick. Sabrina is the Human Resources Director for SAP Central and Eastern Europe. And then finally from IBM, we have Christian Knoll, who is the General Manager of IBM Global Business Services for the DACH region at IBM. And he is also a strong supporter of the program, and an ally of our LGBT+ community. So thank you all of our panelists for joining, and let's jump into our discussion to talk more about working positively. I'm going to start with Sabrina and then Christian for the first question. And I noticed this in the video, and then I also saw it during some of the chat comments that were going on, that we are living in a very unprecedented time in 2020. It's been a challenging year for everybody. But even in the video, there was a comment during Jörg's video about, I thought HIV was something from the 1990s. So why is it still important to talk about HIV in the 21st century? And do we still encounter misunderstandings about HIV globally? Sabrina, I'll let you go first with your comments.
Thank you very much, Bob, and hello from my side. Hello to the SAP colleagues. I saw some in the chat. Greetings to Singapore as well. So yeah, I mean, Bob, absolutely. I have to be very honest. I came to this project also right after the kickoff, I think last year in Germany, when I worked very closely with Ernesto on bringing this to life as well in my region in Eastern Europe. And to be very honest with you, when I came to it, my knowledge about HIV was exactly that from the 1990s as well. I shouldn't be saying this as an HR director, as a very active diversity promoter in our company and in my private life, but it is what it is, because you do not have so many touch points with HIV positive people in your life. It is either because they do not speak about it, or simply because your network, I mean, luckily enough, you know, you don't see them everywhere, and or it doesn't pop up everywhere. And so you don't really handle it day by day. And I think while this program is extremely important to make employees and future employees being HIV positive feel comfortable in joining our organizations and feeling welcome and knowing that they can feel safe and will not be discriminated against, but it is almost more important for all the other employees and the ecosystems of our companies and organizations to educate them about what it means to be HIV positive in the 21st century, and that you can actually live a normal life and don't need any extra special treatment in the organization. I think this is even much more important than giving that platform for the employees that are affected themselves.
Great, thanks Sabrina. And Christian, I know you've been very involved in the program since it launched. Do you have some additional comments to share on this topic?
No, absolutely, Bob. So this is really simple. Everybody in a workplace should be able to bring their whole self to the workplace, to be able to work openly and just to focus on the work, the human interactions, but not to have to live a double life. And you heard it from Axel. For a number of years, he did live a double life, having to not reveal something. And I think it's absolutely right that every employer should provide the environment, hence positive arbeiten, or working positively, as a pledge for every employer to say, I'm going to educate my workforce, I'm going to educate my managers to actually really understand that, as Sabrina said, life is different. My wife was a nurse in the 1980s on an AIDS ward, and in those days it was a different story. But that's the 1980s. Those are the days of the dark black posters when things were bad. Life has completely changed. And you heard it from Jörg. You can live a perfectly normal life, absolutely normal life. The infection is absolutely not an issue. You can share a glass, you can hug, you can kiss, you can do whatever. It really isn't an issue. But we need to bring that across. And to do that, it needs employers to stand up and actually say, this is the way it's going to be in our company, and we're going to stand up for this. So Axel, again, your story chokes me every time I hear it, and thank you for sharing that again with us.
Great, thanks Christian. And I think one of the things that resonates with a lot of us on the call is just, we all have hidden things, that whether it's our sexuality or a chronic disease, something in our lives, and being able to bring that forward in the workplace and not be judged by it is just so important. So these stories are just, like you said, Christian, inspiring. Let's turn back to Axel then. Axel, it was, as everybody said, inspiring to hear your story, and great that IBM was so supportive of your journey when you shared this with them. But how can we have so many businesses on our call today from all over the world? How can employers support people with HIV or other invisible chronic diseases? What, now that you've been through this journey, what would be your recommendations on that topic?
My first recommendation, Bob, would be that employers should take care to have an open environment at all. Christian was mentioning that it doesn't, I'm not just talking about HIV, but it's, you have to be you have to have the impression of your employer that you can talk openly about everything. HIV is a very good example because there is a special stigmatization on that disease. First of all, it's always connected in the mind of people to sexuality, something you normally don't like to talk so much at an employer place. But secondly, this is more important, people who got HIV, most of the time they are asked, what did you do wrong? It's a feeling of being guilty for something which you are not at all guilty about. And I think if an employer is able to have an atmosphere inside the company where people know we can talk about everything. It might be a disease, it might be a drug problem, it might be something from a private life, which I would like to share with my company because then I'm more open in my work as well. This would be, I think, the first and the most important step towards that.
And you've learned just from your journey, Axel, that I think your career, you've excelled in your career, both with this project and your performance continues to be outstanding in your consulting work. So nothing has slowed you down.
No, not at all. And it's really a very good feeling to be without fears, without having the impression, oh, somebody might discover something which they should not know. This is awful.
Yeah. One follow-up question, Axel. I saw this in the chat earlier and you and I had talked about it prior. Since we're living in this unprecedented time with COVID, are you seeing any similarities with maybe the COVID experience? Or I'm sure there's many, many differences as well, but how would you relate to that?
Yeah, Bob, we talked about it. I don't want to compare directly HIV with COVID because I think the diseases are really different. But also with COVID, we notice nowadays that there is a stigmatization. If you walk on the street, at least here in Europe, and you see some people, when they see an Asian colored people on the streets, they make a big turn around them. Oh, they might have COVID. This stigmatization, this should not happen. This is something in our minds which we have to get out of that. And you know, HIV in the beginning, there was also no treatment at all. And the people were really dying at the first years of the disease. But then there was developed at least a treatment. You cannot successfully get HIV out of the body until now. This is not yet happening. But with COVID, we are also in a situation where people are afraid, what happens to me if I get the disease? How will my colleagues, my friends go with me when I have COVID? So there are some similarities, but the diseases are very different.
Yeah, I think the stigma comparison is really valuable to talk about. And it sounds like some of the companies, based on the chat, have done some additional work and sessions on this topic. So I'm glad we got a chance to touch on that. Going back to Christian and Sabrina, so Jörg and Axel had phenomenal support from IBM and SAP. I'm not sure if every company has been as supportive. Hopefully, as we're learning that they are, but what do you think can be done inside our companies, inside our organizations to fight discrimination and the stigma against our HIV positive colleagues? And maybe Christian, you could start with this time.
Okay, so Bob, I think it starts from the top. I think you have to, as they say, walk the talk. As an executive, as a senior executive, you have to actually get in and understand the topic. So it starts off with understanding, it then goes into action, and you have to do something about it. So even the Working Positively pledge is a pledge, but it needs execution. It then needs us to go to our leadership teams, to our managers, to educate, to stand on the stage, and to actually do something to educate around where we are today. So if there's a tagline to all of this, it's about personal commitment from leadership to get stuff done. I mean, you're a wonderful example of that, and I'm trying my best to stand up here as an ally to actually say, look, as a business leader, I really stand for this, and I'm going to be on stage, I'm going to take time, and it's two things. One of them is, of course, it's the absolute social issue about allowing everybody to be themselves at work. But also, colleagues, for those of you maybe a little bit more hard-nosed in business, it makes business sense. People are productive, people are happier at work, it creates a better work environment. It really is. It's good for people, it's good for employees, it's good for society, and it's good for business. So it really is a win-win all around, and it just makes sense. But you do actually have to walk the talk.
Yeah, Christian, you're a great example of that. So thank you, because I think you're right, and I think Silke touched on that earlier, that it takes executive support. Sabrina, from SAP's perspective, any additional thoughts or advice to our team?
Sure. So, I mean, Christian said it all. Basically, I can totally relate to that. And it's so crucial that the senior management team, you know, drives it and also executes upon it. So it's not just I stand for it, I pledge for it, but really following through. We at SAP, we say, bring everything you are and then become everything you want. So that provides the environment again for everybody, no matter what they bring, but they can bring all they are. Only if they bring all they are, they can really become everything they want, right? To your point, Christian, like also productivity, but also creativity, feeling good at work. We spend so much time at work. We need to be able to be ourselves in order to do an outstanding job and enjoy ourselves at work as well, right? Imagine you going to work every day and you cannot be your true self. I mean, this makes the 40 plus years that we're working a really hard time, and that's what we want to avoid. Maybe in addition to what Christian said, following through to it, what we're driving now is the global rollout, but we're really taking a country by country approach that multiplies let's say the effect, but what it also ensures is that we tackle some cultural and maybe country specific differences and nuances and focus areas that we have to consider with the whole situation of HIV in the countries, the perception of it in the society, and how we can actually discuss it, and in how far we can do. We can also gather, you know, other allies with our customers and partners to join us in as well. This follows through on the let's execute on it, but I believe we cannot only have, you know, let's say the global executives or our headquarter executives to do whatever they can. We need to bring this down into country approaches to ensure that we really get everybody out of all of our employees, as well as, you know, our whole ecosystem to buy into it, because it will make most sense for them in their own culture, let's say.
Yeah. Great. Thanks, Sabrina. And we're going to get into ecosystem in a little bit too. The chat room loved the bring everything you are, become everything you want. I think that could be a new hashtag for our event. We have one more question for Axel, and then we'll get to Silke as well. But Axel, any big learnings that you want to share now that Working Positively has been launched, and the Europe region specifically, and the Dutch region? Any final thoughts on learnings to share with the team?
I think Silke was already mentioning that there was a story behind the working together of Deutsche Aidshilfe and IBM for 10 years. We have done common projects together. We sent a lot of our students for internships to Deutsche Aidshilfe. So there was a very, very big trust getting higher and higher. And from the very first moment, the senior management of Deutsche Aidshilfe and the senior management of IBM were connected and were exchanging their points of views. And I think this is very important. When you roll out Working Positively in another region, you need an NGO, and you need to build up a relationship with that NGO before you start to go it on the market. We don't have the expertise inside IBM nor inside SAP about HIV. We get it from the NGO who are the experts on that. And this is my very important learning, and also for the rollout for other countries now in Europe, that we first look for NGOs locally to support us in the rollout.
Great, thanks, Axel. That leads to Silke. You had an inspiring, you shared what Deutsche Aidshilfe is doing to help make this program real. And I did want you to expand a little bit on Axel's comment about the role of the NGO, the importance of the NGO as part of this program.
Yes, thanks, Bob. So I think I totally agree with Axel, and Sabrina mentioned it, and Stacy in the chat. You need a local or national, at least national NGO or CBO to go for this, because like what can they offer? They offer the specific knowledge about living with HIV and AIDS in this region, country, local situation. We can offer trainings, we can offer information, we can make sure that the language we use, that the wording, that the whole fear of people is really reflected in a good way, and to bring forward the sensitization of employees and employers towards HIV, and to make sure that the knowledge is really up to date, that we are talking about living with HIV in the year 2020 and on, and not in the 80s and not in the 90s and even not in 2002. So this is really to make sure that the conditions, they differ. So we have different anti-discrimination laws in the different countries. We have completely different societal situations. We have different history of HIV treatment, of HIV discrimination. So, and what to me is the most important, HIV is an infectious disease which is not easily transmittable, but which has the biggest taboo you can ever imagine. And to break the taboo, it's so important to have the knowledge up to date, but also to be open to think about taboos and to think about prejudices you have. And I think this is asked too much from the HIV-positive employees who offer to be open in their companies. They need support by CBO or NGO side to really to bring all these topics in trainings, or however the company decides to go for the issue and to address the topic and to bring it to the workforce. So this is like the contribution that the NGOs can bring, and I really heartily recommend to go for this and to engage. And I think, to be honest, we learned in all those years so much together, IBM and Deutsche Aidshilfe. But it's such an honor to do this program together on eye level, really from our competencies, bringing together the perspectives and the knowledge. So this is, and the engagement and the power. So this is great, and this will make things happen.
Thank you, Silke. Yeah, no, it's making a phenomenal difference. I can tell you I've learned so much in about the importance of your role. So we really appreciate the support. And that really concludes our panel discussion. Thanks, Sabrina, Christian, Axel, and Silke for sharing more about working positively. I'm seeing that there's a lot of comments in the chat about where we could take this globally, how we could support it globally. So one of the exciting things that will be happening is we are rolling it out to various countries, including the United States and North America. And we have a great partner to help us do that, the Human Rights Campaign, HRC. So this is a great transition from the importance of the NGO, and then now how HRC will be supporting the rollout of Working Positively to North America. So joining us is the Director of HIV and Health Equity, Jay Maurice McCants-Persall. Jay Maurice, I hope I pronounced your name correctly. I will turn it over to you, and we're looking forward to hearing about how HRC will be continuing to help us bring this forward.
Thank you, Bob. You did. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to share my screen at the moment. Okay. So I am, oh, it won't let me advance. Okay, so here you go. Good morning. Thank you for inviting me to be a part of this dynamic conversation. We are looking forward to being a part of the rollout of Working Positively in the United States. I'm Jay Maurice McCants-Persall. I'm the Director of HIV and Health Equity at the Human Rights Campaign. And what I want to do is take the time this moment to provide you a brief snapshot of HIV in the United States. So despite advances in HIV prevention and treatment, sexually active individuals are at risk for HIV acquisition. The data shows us that people of color are at far greater risk for HIV. And oftentimes that heightened risk for HIV exposure for people of color is attributed to pretty much a lack of access to culturally competent medical providers and care, as well as issues around affordability, and more importantly, HIV-related stigma. Based off of information that we receive from the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention, we know that persons who identify as gay and bisexual are disproportionately impacted by HIV. When we look at the overall EPI, we see that 1 in 6 gay and bisexual men will encounter HIV in their lifetime. And then when we break that down demographically or racially, we see that if for Latinos, 1 in 4 gay and bisexual men will encounter HIV in their lifetime, and 1 in 2 Black men will encounter HIV in their lifetime in the United States. And again, this is based off of current HIV epidemiological trends. However, when we look at our priority populations, we know that or HRC estimates that there are roughly 14 million LGBTQ adults and 2 million LGBTQ youth in the United States. So when we look at our priority population, we understand that women, particularly transgender women, are at disproportionate risk for HIV acquisition. At least 1 in 30 transgender women are living with HIV. When we look at Black transgender women, they are at least 3 times more likely to be diagnosed with HIV. And then when we look at Latino or Latina transgender women, they are at least 1.5 times more likely to be diagnosed with HIV. And then when we look at the overall Black community, Black Americans are 7 times more likely than white Americans to be living with HIV and account for 46% of people living with HIV in the United States identify and are Black people. When we look at youth, we see that 1 in 5 new diagnoses were among young people between the ages of 13 and 24. So HRC, we in 2018 identified the top 5 industries in which LGBTQ adults in the United States are more likely to work, making up about 40% of all of industries where LGBTQ people work. The top 5 comprise of 2 million who work in restaurants and food services, about 15%, 1 million who work in hospitals at 7.5%, almost 1 million who work in K through 12 education at 7%, and 1 million who work in colleges and universities, and that's 7% of LGBTQ adults, and 500,000 who work in retail at 4% of LGBTQ adults. And when we go even further and we look at HIV in the workplace, we know that HIV disproportionately impacts gay and bisexual men as well as transgender women. And again, to the point that I made earlier, specifically those of color. But it's also important for us to remember that from the factory floor to the corner office, people bring bits and pieces of themselves to the workforce every day. And it is important that we understand that there are common biases, beliefs, and misconceptions about HIV, but it's also imperative that we not allow our beliefs and biases to harm our employees. Fortunately, inclusive employers can take active steps to creating a more welcoming climate for employees, and they do that in policies and programs. And those areas should be, and that should be focused in 4 key areas. We look at education and awareness, pretty much dispelling biases and stigma towards people living with HIV, and our policies, seeking welcoming and productive workplace for employees living with HIV, treatment and support services, therefore requiring access to safe and affordable treatment and support services for people living with HIV. And then last but not least, in our philanthropy and volunteerism, by fighting HIV through philanthropic activities such as grants, employee matching programs, and volunteerism programs. So at HRC, you may ask, well, what is it that we do? At HRC, we partner with minority-led and serving community-based organizations. We partner with corporations, universities, hospitals, health departments, and advocates. And we do this to develop programming and to advocate for access to equitable services and programs, and more importantly, equality for all. And I say this, regardless if it's in the boardroom, the classroom, the emergency room, behind prison walls, or in a sanctuary, it's important that we do this through strategic partnerships, online learning, public education, community engagements, capacity building, and advocacy. So, I mean, last but not least, we are excited at the HRC Foundation that in partnership with IBM and SAP and Deutsche Aidshilfe, we are excited to bring Working Positively to the United States. As you've heard, Working Positively is a global campaign that invites employers to commit to being visible role models in their support for employees living with HIV. I encourage you to check out our new website or to reach out to any of our colleagues on this webinar today to find out how your organization can support this effort. Thank you so much for allowing us to be a part of this, and we look forward to working with our American partners to roll out Working Positively. So back to Axel.
Thank you very much. I'm really impressed by also seeing on this chat all your comments and all your wishes about the campaign, and be sure we will take them seriously in our consideration. We want to roll it out globally, as Sabrina, Christian, and Bob already noticed, but it will take time because we have to prepare each country for its own, as Sabrina was mentioning. I'm feeling really, really honored by the fact that I saw that one person outed himself in the chat as HIV positive, which is a big step, I know that, to make that public. And to this person, I personally address that he can always contact me on LinkedIn, as everyone of you else as well. I would be very happy if we find with this session today a lot of supporters in North America, in Canada, in Europe, but also in Asia, South America, in Russia, in all the countries where HIV is the subject we should talk about. And my big wish is that we all keep in mind, we are not only talking about HIV, we are talking about stigmatization and discrimination in general. People who have a drug problem, people who have an alcohol problem, people who have another disease, people who might have some other issues in behaving. These are all people like ourselves. We should treat them as we treat our families, our close ones. We should never put any pressure on someone that he changes us just to be like us. Let everybody be himself, herself. And especially in the area when it's connected to disease, it's not so easy to talk about the disease. It took me really time to be that open with the disease, because I know nowadays I would never be able to hide it from someone else nowadays, because just Google my name and you will find out who I am. And the first thing you find at Google is, oh, he is HIV positive. So it's a big step. And one more message I would like to send to all of you. For me and for Jörg, it was the right approach to be open with the disease in this way we are doing it. But this is not that we are requesting that from anybody that he should follow this way. It's a very personal decision, and maybe for someone else, there might be a different way to be open with the disease. Maybe only in the family, maybe only in a very close area of his job. So it's always depending on the very individual person how to handle the issue. But we would be all happy, IBM, SAP, Deutsche Aidshilfe and the Human Rights Campaign, if we find a lot of companies of all sizes, and this is very important. We are not only talking about global companies like IBM and SAP. It's very important that the butcher at the corner is also able to accept an employee who has HIV. It's also important that somebody working in the health industry, in a hospital, as a doctor, can be open with HIV. There are a lot of examples that's especially in areas where we think that people are very open and very well informed about the disease, there's a lot of stigmatization still going on. So there's a lot of work to do. I invite you all to connect to each of us on LinkedIn to share your wishes, to share your expectations with us, and we will try our best to get them fulfilled. Working Positively is a global campaign. We are proud to have made the first step here in Europe, in Germany, but we are now thinking that a very important step is now the rollout in the North American area, US and Canada, because there, as it was just mentioned by HRC, there are a lot of stigmatizations going on, which we have to get rid of. Thank you very much to all of you, and thanks for joining the session, and we are looking forward to be in contact with you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.